okay?
That's okay. You have
All
15.
right. Steve, it's such a joy to get to talk to you, especially about this movie.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
I remember first meeting you, and really fangirling out, fanboying out, however one wants to put it. Uh, and I don't know if you remember that moment, but it was really overwhelming to run into all the guys from Manborg once. And I had just seen that and seen it with my kids.
It's a lot of, I mean, Astron 6 is a lot to take in if you're encountering them out in the wild. It's a lot of clashing personalities to have to absorb. So yeah.
You were all very tolerant and kind, and you signed my Manborg DVD, which I still proudly hold up for my friends.
Aw, well, that's
and
awesome.
then and then you went on to do The Void, which was like a love letter to John Carpenter, which I completely adored and have seen several times.
Oh, thank you.
But it was far different than
A
Manborg.
big departure for sure. I mean, that's a result of it being like a me and Jeremy Gillespie production. So it wasn't, I think a lot of that influence comes from him. I mean, I'm passionate about like that kind of horror film, that kind of cosmic horror film. And I think he like it, I think the two of us like kind of merged our sensibilities to make that project. And that's why it's so like stands on its own compared to everything else that I do. Because my default mode is like fun and wacky, I'm realizing now.
Yeah, well, and Frankie Frico certainly underlines that in bold strokes. You know, this was it a desire to kind of just dive full bore back into that sort of filmmaking?
It was a result of watching like every little monster movie back to back one Christmas. Like I think it like 2021 into 2022. I don't remember when it was. It was like Christmas holidays, and Pierce, my DOP on the film, he was Twitch streaming just like every little creature movie. And so we were watching them, and I was like, it was just like bearing this bug in my brain of like, hey, it'd be fun to make something like this. I was getting really obsessed with just like how they were shot, how janky the puppets would be in shots. I just got fixated on this idea of like actors trying to interact with inanimate objects. And I've like I guess I've like dipped my toe in it a little bit with things like Psycho Gorman. Specifically the council scene where Cortex, like Matt Kennedy, is interacting with Tube Man, who's just a puppet. And that was something I had a lot of fun shooting and have like a lot of fond memories of. And I remember even at that time thinking like, I want a movie where it's just a guy like navigating a bunch of weirdos like the whole time, where it's like you've got one human character and the rest of them are essentially inanimate objects, barely functioning puppets. And so after watching all these puppet movies, I was like, oh, we should try and make this happen. I wanted to put Connor in something for a long time. He's like, he's a comedy genius and a super talented actor. And I just wanted an excuse to, yeah, basically just beat him up with puppets for 80 minutes. And so that's where this movie came from.
You're the Sam Raimi of little monster movies.
Yeah, well, we did realize that,
Looking
like, as
forward to
we are
the release.
making it, it was like a little bit of an Evil Dead vibe where we're just coming up with ways to torment Connor and make his life miserable. And Adam as well. I don't want to spoil what happens to him, but he's still traumatized by it. He still brings it up as being miserable. So, yeah, we definitely like made like the Evil Dead of little puppet monster movies.
It's weird to me because as somebody who saw Gremlins like 7 times when it first released in the theater, and then went out and to Blockbuster and got every little monster movie that ever came out after that. Um, it would be easy to just sort of pigeonhole Frankie Frico that way, but the truth is, it's reminiscent of so many things. Like it reminded me of Weird Science.
Yeah.
Connor's performance reminded me of Crime Wave a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's just this goody two shoes guy who's got to loosen up and figure out that he's in a world of hurt, and he's one of the reasons why.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Um, so I just think there's a lot more going on in the film. You can see behind me, I have all these collectibles, and behind you are all, you're in your creature shop, it looks like.
Mhm.
And here we are, we're surrounded by little monsters.
Yeah, always.
And that's kind of what we do as fans of genre movies is we populate our real life universe with all of this fantasy.
Well, there is definitely like somebody could read into like this meaning of the movie with the way that, early on Connor's confronted with real life adult problems, like problems at work, problems at home, problems in the bedroom. And the idea that the solution to that is to go on a wacky adventure with a bunch of little monsters and go into essentially a complete fantasy world, uh, maybe operates as a bit of a metaphor for the lifestyle that I have chosen as a filmmaker and an effects artist, where it's like I don't need to deal with real life. I'm too busy dealing with these freaks around me. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely somebody could analyze that into oblivion at some point.
Well, yeah, and that idea of the protagonist who does the thing that's like reading from the scroll of Thoth and the mummy. The mummy's going to come to life and drive you crazy, like poor Bramwell Fletcher in the Universal movie. It also reminded me of Weird Science because of that. Like, let's solve our problems in this magical way. And of course, that doesn't work out.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the more you bring up weird science, the more I'm seeing it that it's well, it's the classic scenario that's like a cat in the hat scenario is
A
what
cat in the
people
hat
keep
from
saying on
hell, yeah.
set is the like you're kind of unleashing this fantastical thing that you think is going to make your life fun and easy, and it ends up just becoming a problem.
Or the
So
mask. It's
yeah,
like the mask. But all of these movies, they speak to a sort of glee, a sort of joy, not just a desire to connect with the otherworldly and everything, but to just be children, to be at rest, to be at play in an environment where we feel safe.
yeah.
Yeah, it's almost Frankie Freako's almost a family film.
Yeah, well, that was intentional. I wanted it to like really skirt that line as much as possible. I mean, outside of a few bursts of intense violence, it's like I made a deliberate point of there being barely any swears. I think they say what they say like ass at one point.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh but it's like TV level swearing. Like there's no F-bombs, uh no nudity. And again, the violence is like brief bursts of violence, but nothing lasting or punish. I just didn't want to make like a punishing movie for people. I feel we got enough of that in the genre space right now. So the idea of something that's like a little lighter and fluffier, like it almost seems like it seems like I'm trolling the community a little bit by doing that because we're so obsessed with like having like a 2.5 hour gore fest when I just want an 82-minute puppet fest, you know? So
yeah. And you
I
do
feel
hear
like there is
movies.
a market for this and there is a desire to have a spectrum of movies that run the range of like, yeah, a Martyrs on one side and a Ghoulies Go to College on the other side.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I also thought of dinosaurs. When I was watching this
Oh
because of the
yeah.
puppet latex angle. Um,
Oh yeah, I
but
used to love that show.
oh gosh, not the mama.
Yep.
I mean, I've been walking around to people actually saying Shabba-doo. It's just this.
It's yeah, I mean, it's my favorite
I
thing
want a
is
pin. I want a shirt. I want it all.
I think we gotta get Show Factory's gotta get on some merch here, I think. Some shirts would be nice. Uh Shabadoo shirts would be cool. But yeah, I'm all about iconography and like making things that people latch onto and want to like just keep saying like if Shabadoo can get integrated into pop culture in any way, I'll be very happy.
But what you're really tapping into is people's hearts, is people's desire I mean, like you said, the genre has been very, very dark. I'm thinking like, say, the Terrifier films are, which are incredibly dark and violent.
Yeah.
And to criticize them in any way, but just to say
Well,
that's,
yeah, but that's a style of genre movie that people like, and it has every right to exist, and I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah,
fine
yeah.
with it. It's just not something that I personally like. I don't go home at night and I'm like, I need to watch Sallow, you know?
How about
Like,
a puppet version of Sallow? Wouldn't that be great,
I mean, maybe that's the sequel. I don't know. Go way in the opposite direction and go as hard as we possibly can. But yeah, I do think like just for the sake of my mental health, like I need some lighter fare to enjoy. And I kind of offended that people consider the idea of making a lighter thing that's kid friendly is somehow like you're not like you're cheaping out or you're skimping out and you're not doing like you're always supposed to push the envelope. And I don't think people fully understand like what the envelope is. To me, the envelope is like just how crazy you can make a movie. And I'm confident I made a crazy movie
Yeah.
that doesn't need to have foul language and nudity and extreme violence. Like it's a movie that I know will drive some people insane in its absurdity, and that makes me very happy.
Well, people are out there, trying to tell stories, and there's all kinds of stories to tell and all sorts of ways to tell them. I think what really strikes me, it's interesting. I graduated seminary in May, and I graduated with a master's in theological studies and a master's in public ministry, and and people know me. My nickname is the Creature Feature Preacher. Um,
Nice.
but hand in hand with that goes the assumption that I wouldn't like any of this stuff. And what I love about it is people like you who you show up on my screen, the smile on your face, the childlike sort of joy that you take
Yeah.
in what you do. And I remember what it was like to be, particularly as a kid, discovering stuff like this for the first time and how affirming it was for me as a person.
That's a good word. Affirming is like really the experience that I'm always chasing with this stuff is I want to try and relive that experience of like being old enough that I could rent what I wanted at the video store and going and picking up, yeah, like Puppet Master 4 and 5 and being like, I love this stuff and it feels good knowing that other people like this stuff too, enough to make it and this is their career to make this stuff. So that was always the goal was like I want to like it's like a justification of perpetually being half in a fantasy universe in my mind all the time.
Well, and the danger as an interviewer is when you get somebody that you admire in your sights and you want to do that, that Chris Farley thing of, hey, remember when you did that thing? You're just lost in your own, like, wow, I get to do this. This is so cool. But I think the kind of like almost DIY quality of something like Frankie Frico, it really invites people to a different kind of appreciation where maybe they can start to play themselves.
That's really the goal, I think, for me is like I want some kid to watch this and be like, "Oh, that's stop motion. That's those are miniatures. Those are just hand puppets." Like that's what I used to do as a kid watching stuff is I just like to pick things apart and be like, oh, that's a composite shot. I can see the matte lines. They put the stop motion skeleton is here and the live action plate is here. Like as you start to like unravel that stuff uh in your head, like becoming like just as like film and effects language starts to become clearer. Um yeah, you start that's where that feeling of like maybe I could do this starts happening. And it would be amazing to like inspire some kid to do the same thing and just keep doing this. I think that's the hope is you always want to just perpetuate this cycle of making wacky movies
Well,
and
and
inspire the next generation, hopefully.
yeah, I mean, I remember when DVDs were first a thing, and by then people were starting to encounter the way that movies were made, and they were becoming more familiar.
Yeah.
Uh, and there was a lot of criticism about that. There was a lot of like feeling like, oh, you're destroying the magic. And my feeling is like, Well, don't you think that like Ray Harryhausen felt the magic of what he was doing?
Exactly. Like, well, and that was the turning point for me was when I got Army of Darkness on VHS that had is the Anchor Bay release that had the bonus features at the end. And so it was like the making of the movie and being able to see like get that window into Kane BFX and seeing just a bunch of dudes running around making skeleton puppets, like that was a turning point where I was like, oh, I could do that. And like not in a like way to diminish the significance or the magic of the movie, but it was just like, oh, that's how it works. That it just makes me love it more. Like, uh, it's. I think the craft is as important as the final product. The journey is as important as the destination for me with movies. I love the process, and I love knowing about the process and what led to the decisions that ended up on screen. So I don't think like hiding that from people is beneficial to anybody. Like
No,
I
I don't
want to
think
know
it
all of
is.
it.
Well, I mean, and again, the whole idea of like, I know for myself as somebody who's collected memorabilia over the years, and basically little versions of all the creatures that I love from movies, there's this sense of, I got to tour Bob Burns' house
Yeah, cool.
about 15 years ago, man, and Bob just spent 3 hours with me in his house, and it was the most amazing experience. For those of you who don't know, Bob Burns is he's this one of the great collectors of movie memorabilia, and has kept an unbelievable amount of really cool stuff alive over the years.
Yeah,
And
it's an insane collection.
have you been there? Have you seen it?
I've seen like pictures, but I've
Oh,
never been.
it'll change your life. I mean, you're standing in a room, and all of a sudden there's Captain Nemo's helmet from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. There's the boots that Glenn Strange wore as Frankenstein from Abbott and Costello. There's Robbie the Robot's head. There's the time machine off in the corner, and your brain doesn't know how to process it.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like a film history, and it's you have to acknowledge that. You have to acknowledge what came before, and you have to like, yeah, like really like bask in the magic of that early stuff.
Are
Like,
you trying to save your legacy of stuff that you've created for the different films you've worked on?
I mean, I wish I could afford a storage locker to put all this stuff. The reality is a lot of it gets trashed just
Yeah,
from shooting it.
yeah,
Uh, but I'm trying, like, going forward, I've been trying to like find ways to preserve things, whether it's like making like replicas. Like I actually just remolded Psycho Gorman's face.
yeah.
So I can make like busts of him from the original mold, just so like some version of him remains intact. And maybe I'll make them available for purchase at some point. But I'm just trying to like build like the catalog up of stuff. So yeah, I have something because it would suck for all of it to get lost to time.
Well, and we always do have the special features. Are you going to be including special feature material on any home video release of Frankie Frico?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Shout Factory, so I actually, what was it, about a month ago, I shot a bunch of bonus features for them. There's like we did a commentary, there's like a little making of that I did, like just behind the scenes footage. And then we also did a fun interview between Connor and Frankie that we
Yeah, I was going to say if you don't have Frankie on camera interacting with breaking the fourth wall for people, you
it's
got
it's a very funny interview. Matt is the best improver, so it's I think that's the best bonus feature out of all of them. So yeah, so there will be a physical release. I don't know when off the top of my head, but I mean I've seen the specs for it and I've approved the artwork of the Blu-ray, so it's coming.
and I have to ask. Normally,
Dave, I'm sorry, we're over time. We have to wrap now. I'm
hey, you know
sorry.
what, Steve? I would give anything to be at Fantastic Fest and shake your hand and watch the audience have the time of their lives at Frankie
Thank you.
Frico. I hope you have the best experience, and
Thank you, man. I really
thanks so much for
appreciate it.
taking the time.
No problem. It's great chatting with you. Let's do it again sometime.
I'd love that. Talk
All
to
right.
you later.
Bye.
Bye.